Com, along with my colleague Robin Wilhoit. I'm John Becker, and we are here to provide live coverage of the escort of a solemn procession for the body of a fallen officer. Sergeant Chris Jenkins is returning to Loudon County. You'll recall he was killed yesterday. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first some background on him. He joined that department in 2002 as a corrections officer. He was a canine officer in 2007, promoted to patrol corporal in 2018, and named sergeant last year. He also served in the military, joined the department after his service in the military. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children. His daughter is in high school, and his son is also a Loudon County Patrol deputy.
We want to share now with you this procession. It will take about 45 minutes. They are bound for the Loudon Funeral Home. The procession will enter onto US 129, that is Alcoa Highway, then onto I-40 West and proceed to I-75 South. At that point, the procession will peel off the interstate onto Sugar Limb Road exit. Sergeant Jenkins will pass by the Loudon County Justice Center. It will pause there, the procession, for 1 minute, and then travel on to the Loudon Funeral Home. The public can pay their respects along this route. There's also a memorial set up at the Justice Center where people over the past many hours have been putting flowers and remembering.
We want to take you live to look at a TDOT camera that shows the procession. You can see this is West Hills, and of course that is I-40 headed westbound. You see the number of officers who are helping escort the body of this fallen sergeant. Again, we're going to see this for about 30 to 35 miles, as Robin mentioned, headed down I-40, then to I-75 before they exit at Lenoir City. And Robin, let's give our viewers who missed our coverage a little background on what happened yesterday.
That's right. This all played out around 8 o'clock yesterday morning. The officer was on I-75, and what we know at that point is that apparently a ladder on a truck had fallen onto the interstate. Then Sergeant Jenkins started a rolling roadblock in order to get that ladder out of the interstate. As he was doing that, a tractor trailer came barreling through, hit 2 cars, then hit his cruiser, and then hit him on the scene. Now that person that is now charged is 42-year-old Christopher Michael Savannah. He is of Houston, Texas.
He is, again, charged in this. And just a little more background before we get to our crews who are stationed throughout the procession route. Again, that truck driver was arrested by troopers. They actually used Sergeant Jenkins' handcuffs to take him into custody. He is charged with DUI and possession of a handgun under the influence. We're going to check in right now with reporter Cole Sullivan, who is in Loudon with more on the tributes to this fallen officer. Cole?
John, right now we're awaiting that procession to arrive here at the exit we're at just off of I-75 behind me. And I can tell you there are already more than a dozen people gathered here to welcome Sergeant Jenkins back home to Loudon County, where he served for 20 years here as a deputy. We're expecting, on my drive down, I could tell you that there were hundreds of cars, hundreds of Loudon County Sheriff's Office deputies heading north to escort that body home. Some of them you've seen on those TDOT cameras there. And then along the interstate headed southbound, other law enforcement agencies stationed to pay their respects. Along the road, we saw Knoxville police officers ready to block traffic heading southbound as the procession goes by. And on overpasses, I saw THP troopers. I saw firefighters from Rural Metro Fire Department with the ladder truck, with the ladder extended on the ladder truck on the overpass, American flags hanging from that ladder, all to honor Sergeant Jenkins, who died in the line of duty, as you said yesterday, just along this stretch of road along I-75, where his body and this procession will now be carried back to a Loudon County funeral home. We're going to continue to keep watch on that and continue to bring you those live updates as we have them as this procession makes its way southbound. For now, I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Cole Sullivan, we appreciate your coverage, and we'll get back to you shortly. Again, this has had quite an impact on the department, about 70 to 80 full-time and part-time deputies. To put that in perspective, there are about 300 officers with Knoxville Police Department. So this is a small group in a tight-knit community of about 50,000 in Loudon County. Let's hear from one of the sergeant's colleagues who spoke about him last night.
This is our worst nightmare, absolutely our worst nightmare. And we're living it right now. We're a family. This is a small agency, and you know, this is home to us. So everybody here is a person, not a number. So it's indescribable.
Let's take another live look at the procession as it's making its way along I-40 bound for Loudon County. This is at Walker Springs Road, and as you can see, car after car after car. We really have not gotten a number as to the number of law enforcement a part of this procession. We are understanding, though, hundreds of cars, and I think this pretty much shows that. Once again, they will make this procession about 35 miles to Loudon County. They will stop at the correction center there, the Justice Center, for a minute before they follow on to the funeral home. This situation, unfortunately, was a tragic reminder of another tragedy that happened in 2004. It turns out that Sergeant Jenkins was first cousins with Sergeant Jason Scott. If you'll recall, in 2004, Jason Scott was killed in a shooting as he was on his way to address a disturbance. At that point, a teenager inside a home shot and killed Sergeant Scott outside the home. That teen, Michael Harvey, he wounded several other officers before taking his own life. The tragedy just gets worse. At that point, Officer Scott and his wife were just days away from delivering their first child, Jaden. Well, Jaden will turn 18 years old next month. A stretch of I-40 is now named for Jason Scott, and yet, to add on to the story, yesterday, Sergeant Jenkins was killed at that spot that is named after Jason Scott.
Along I-75 there. And just more background on the suspect now. We are getting a photo of him and also more on the charges that he's facing again. Here he is on your screen. This is Christopher Savannah. He is out of Houston, Texas, a 42-year-old truck driver. Again, he has been charged with criminally negligent homicide, DUI, possession of a handgun while under the influence, reckless endangerment, simple possession. He ran through a list of sobriety checks on the site there yesterday with a trooper who responded to this scene, and according to investigators, failed some of those sobriety tests and then was taken in and tested as well. He is in jail right now and awaiting a court date that is set for March 22nd. We want to take you back out live to the procession and take a look at Cedar Bluff, as you mentioned, Robin. Dozens of patrol cars helping escort the body of Sergeant Jenkins about 35 miles from Knox County into Loudon County. This is not unusual for tributes for fallen officers. We see officers, deputies, law enforcement from all across the community, the area, and really the country start to pay tribute when they hear of one of their own who's been killed in the line of duty.
And when something like this happens, you want to do something, and something that many people, not only in Loudon County, but around the region, what they've been doing is placing flowers at the Loudon County Justice Center. So with that, we want to turn to Vinay Simlot, who is there as he awaits the procession, which will then stop there for 1 minute. Vinay.
Robin, this is a little memorial that they've set up to Sergeant Jenkins here at the Loudon County Justice Center. This is his patrol car that you see behind me. It's got the thin blue line flags on it. It's got some military uniforms on it, obviously a nod to his military service. And then all day today and yesterday, we saw people putting out balloons here, putting out flowers, putting out stuffed animals, candles, other things like that to honor Officer Jenkins. And I spoke with people here in Loudon County who knew Officer Jenkins. One of them described him to me, Sergeant Jenkins. One of them described him to me as the perfect person, just the perfect person, perfect individual who was out trying to help people, trying to make the community safer, trying to make the roads safer, and that's when he tragically lost his life. Now here at the Loudon County Justice Center, the Blount County Sheriff's Office and the Anderson County Sheriff's Office are picking up some of the shifts that are happening here just to help some of the officers here grieve so they can be part of this procession. So they're part of the procession out there, but they're also helping pick up some of the calls that are coming in to the Sheriff's Department here in Loudon County, just a way for the entire community, John and Robin, to pitch in.
Vinay Simlot at the side of the memorial there and the officer's patrol car in the background. We appreciate your live coverage. Vinay, we'll get back to you. We want to remind our viewers just what this route is looking like. Again, there it is on your screen going from Knox County into Loudon County, and you can see along the way they are offering public tributes to this fallen officer. We want to also show you where it is live right now, and we have a Pellissippi Parkway camera that shows, again, those officers headed west on I-40 before they hit I-75. You can see the traffic that's actually headed in to Knoxville, witnessing something that no one wants to see. Dozens and dozens of patrol cars escorting a fallen officer killed in the line of duty.
And they are heading once again to Loudon County. Loudon County, a small, tight-knit county and community. The Sheriff's Department, a small, tight-knit department, 70 or so full-time, part-time employees. A community where you have to imagine everyone knows everyone. And you have to know right now that so many in that community are hurting, knowing that someone who is serving and protecting them lost their life. Let's take a listen to what the community had to say and how they're reacting to this tragedy.
Our families are actually related, and just at a loss, We lost an incredible man, an incredible father, an incredible officer, and our hearts are broken.
Needless to say, dozens, hundreds of hearts broken following what has played out within really a little more than 24 hours. Last we saw, the procession had passed Pellissippi Parkway, once again heading to I-75 south, and we want to go now to Cole Sullivan. He is at the Sugar Limb exit. That is where, Cole, the procession will then take the exit heading to the center.
The Justice Center from here, Robin, and we'll bring you that live as they approach. I'll continue to look over my shoulder to see, and we can see some police officers along the route here ready to escort that body along with that major procession. You were talking about the tight-knit community and the hearts broken within this department. I was here yesterday as the members of the Loudon County Sheriff's Office were grappling with understanding the early hours of this huge loss for their department. Sergeant Jenkins had served in Loudon County for 20 years, and not only that, his son is a Loudon County Sheriff's deputy, which only adds to the pain that this department is feeling right now. Again, we're awaiting that procession to come by here. I could see it just in the faces, to describe to you the faces and the looks in the eyes of the deputies yesterday as they began hugging each other. They were just very solemn as they grappled with this news that Sergeant Jenkins had died working in the line of duty, working a traffic incident here on I-75 northbound yesterday. That procession approaching us right now as hundreds of Loudon County Sheriff's deputies, hundreds of law enforcement officials, law enforcement agents throughout the region escort that body of Sergeant Jenkins back here to Loudon County, back home to Loudon County. We talked about the number of people within the Sheriff's Office, only 70 or 80 people within the Sheriff's Office. Every single one of those deputies, Robin and John, escorting that body today.
Cole Sullivan, we appreciate that perspective, and we also want to take you to that live picture we're seeing of the procession. Again, these are TDOT cameras, and one thing we're noticing is that right there on your screen you see people who are driving the other direction pulling off on the shoulder to show a sign of respect. They are pausing as this procession moves past them to honor this fallen officer. We're also seeing that online as well. There's an Officer Down memorial page that is up right now, and it honors all officers killed in the line of duty, and sadly Sergeant Jenkins is the first person you see on that page. But you see many comments from fellow officers around the country, New Jersey, New Hampshire. Here are some of the things they're saying. Rest in peace, brother. My thoughts are with your family, friends, and members of your agency during this most difficult and tragic time. Another officer, again, this one from New Hampshire in George Mills, New Hampshire, says, a police officer should be remembered not by how he died, but how he lived. A great man has gone to secure a safe path for the rest of us to follow. Thank you to you, your family, and the Loudon County Sheriff's Office. Our country is a little less safe without you. Rest in peace, brother.
And the Loudon County Sheriff's Department saying basically they are living their worst nightmare right now. this loss of a fellow brother, if you will. I want to share a little bit more with you about Sergeant Jenkins. He was 48 years old. He joined the Loudon County Sheriff's Office 20 years ago, a 20-year veteran. But let's run down his career. He started out in 2002 as a corrections officer, then the following year a patrol officer. He was also a canine officer, appointed to that role in 2007, became corporal in 2018, and sergeant just last year in 2021. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children, a daughter who is in high school, and a son who is also a patrol deputy with the Loudon County Sheriff's Department. There is a memorial, as we've been talking about, at the Justice Center. People have been coming by, leaving flowers, paying their respects. And at a time like this, law enforcement, they pull together, and there are a number of agencies right now that are assisting. You have Oak Ridge, Anderson County, Lenoir City, Blount County. They are all assisting their fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement at this time.
This is a live picture of Lovell Road, and you see, Robin, as you mentioned, some of those brothers and sisters lined up on the bridge there to take in this procession and offering a final salute to this officer as he heads from Knox County into Loudon County. Again, this is a live look from Lovell Road in Knox County, and this procession will last about 35 miles or so before we see it come to an end at the funeral home in Loudon County. Vinay, let's check in once again with you. You're standing by with more on the tributes at that memorial that Robin was referencing.
Here at the Justice Center, you can see how many people have lined up waiting for that procession to come through. The Lenoir City Utility Board and the Greenback Fire Department are also out here with American flags lining the route. And then there's Sergeant Jenkins's patrol car that is sitting over here as kind of a memorial to him and a nod to his life as a sheriff's deputy here in Loudon County, and then also some of his military service. What we expect here when the procession comes through is that the hearse will stop. They will go parallel to the patrol car that we have over here. They will stop for 60 seconds to honor him for a moment of silence, and then they'll continue on to the funeral home. So they will stop here at the Justice Center before going on. But again, John, Robin, you mentioned the brothers in blue, the sisters in blue, the folks out here in Loudon County helping out the Sheriff's Department as they go through this grieving process. We've got Anderson County Sheriff's Department here. The Blount County Sheriff's Department is here. We've also heard that the Knox County Sheriff's Department sent people to help patrol the area, help do some of the calls that are coming into the Sheriff's Department, just so the folks out here can grieve. And that's the latest from here at the Justice Center, John and Robin.
All right, Vinay, thank you very much. And as you can see, so many people behind Vinay gathering as the procession makes its way to the Justice Center in Loudon County. This procession beginning about 30 minutes ago at the Forensic Center in Knoxville. It has once again taken this journey onto I-40, now in West Knox County, far West Knox County. I'm assuming pretty soon peeling off to go onto I-75 South, which then it will take the Sugar Limb exit before it does go to the Justice Center. You see right now that escort, that procession, car after car, hundreds of cars from throughout the region coming here to pay their respects.
It's a pretty extraordinary picture because we're looking at I-40 that is normally rushing back and forth both ways with cars and traffic. And you see at the top of your screen that people who are headed in the opposite direction are pulling over to pay their respects. This is a true sign of solidarity for the Loudon County Sheriff's Department and officers everywhere who put it on the line every day, sacrificing themselves, their families to keep us safe. This is a pretty extraordinary picture.
Indeed it is, and it just goes on and on and on. Let's take another look at the map in which they are traveling. Let's pull that up and you can see right there. And as we just saw from the video, they are getting ever closer to the Sugar Limb exit, which will then take them to the Justice Center. Speaking of Sugar Limb, let's go back to Cole Sullivan. He is there as he awaits the procession. Cole.
And And as part of this final salute, Robin, more and more people are gathering here at the Sugar Limb exit. Probably about 24 people parked their cars along the side of the road. And now some other law enforcement officers. I'll have you take a look over this way, and you can see more law enforcement officers parked over on the top of this overpass here at the exit. And this is the scene we have seen replicated over and over again along this route. Law enforcement officers from other agencies coming in to pay their respects, coming in to honor, give a final salute to Sergeant Jenkins. And the Knoxville Police Department posting that it has authorized officers to wear a black band over their badge from now until Sergeant Jenkins is laid to rest, at midnight on the day Sergeant Jenkins is laid to rest. An example of how the family in blue is coming together to support one of their own who has served for 20 years in Loudon County. As part of this community, his daughter, a high schooler here in Loudon County, his son, a Loudon County patrol deputy, part of this procession making its way southbound to us here at the Sugar Limb exit right now. In the meantime, the investigation continues. THP officers investigating that. The DA has pressed charges as well. We'll send it back to you.
Right. Cole, thank you very much. Let's take another live look as the hundreds and hundreds of cruisers make their way to the Justice Center. They are now on to I-75 South. I have to imagine not too far away from the Sugar Limb exit where we just saw Cole Sullivan. And once again, as cars are pulling off to pay their respect to Sergeant Jenkins.
We appreciate you tuning into our live coverage of this fallen officer procession. Just to rewind a little bit, we want to remind you of what all unfolded yesterday morning and how this officer lost his life. He was responding at about 8 in the morning to a ladder that was in the middle of I-75. He had slowed traffic in a rolling roadblock and was just getting out of his cruiser when a tractor trailer truck came crashing through, hit one car, and ended up hitting that officer and his car. It killed the deputy, and the driver of that semi has now been charged with DUI. Again, this unfolded at about 8 in the morning yesterday, and the person who is facing those charges is the suspect, Christopher Savannah. He is from the Houston area, age 42. He was arrested yesterday for driving under the influence, and he has a long list of charges that include reckless endangerment, simple possession, unlawful possession of drug paraphernalia. Officers say that he was high on marijuana at the time of this crash. He was taken into custody using the handcuffs of Sergeant Jenkins. That is a sign that officers will often do when they have lost one of their own in a case like this or a shooting case.
Let's take another look as we see the progression getting ever closer to the Loudon County Justice Center. Once again, those vehicles making their way along I-75 southbound, and on the other side you see traffic stopped, paying their respects. This has rocked a community. This has rocked the Loudon County Sheriff's Office. As a matter of fact, the sheriff, Tim Guider, spending time with the Jenkins family yesterday, a representative of the department saying, this is our worst nightmare. We are living our worst nightmare. But in times like this, people rally and they come together and they support. A long list of agencies are there to support the Loudon County Sheriff's Department. We have Oak Ridge, Anderson County, Lenoir City, Blount County, their departments all there to support, and it goes far and beyond that. We want to go back to Cole Sullivan once again, who is at Sugar Limb exit. Cole, they are getting close to you, and you will see them coming by the dozens.
We're ready for them here, and the folks here are waiting for them. We could see some more motion as more people arrive here on scene. I'll have you take a look over my shoulder here as the vantage point that we see. You can see there are no cars on I-75 southbound right now, and that is, we expect, because of that procession making its way this direction. We've seen just a handful of cars in the last few minutes as those hundreds of vehicles begin making their way this way, blocking traffic, as you said, on both sides of the interstate, people stopping to express their solemn final salute to Sergeant Jenkins here. We're going to continue to keep watching this scene and bring you those live updates and those live pictures as we have them, awaiting that funeral procession headed this direction right now. Rob and John.
Hey, Cole, you were at that press conference yesterday, and one of the things that struck us was the fact that the sheriff couldn't really even speak. He was asked a question. You described earlier, and for our viewers just joining us, that was That was a painful press conference for everyone involved.
It was painful for so many folks. The THP sergeants who were giving the press conference, giving out the details, had served alongside Sergeant Jenkins in this region. And then that heartbreaking moment where the sheriff was asked if he could say a few words, and he just couldn't, so overcome by emotion. Sheriff Guider saying that Chris Jenkins was like a son to him. And of course, his son, Jenkins' son, also serves within this department. The solemn mood there was just, you could feel it in the air and in the faces of the folks with that department. Sheriff, been longtime sheriff here in Loudon County, saying that this is just one of the worst days. A representative of the department saying that this is a nightmare that they are living right now, and they are living it out in the open for so many folks to see, with the opportunity for so many folks to share their respects and their support for that department as well.
Beyond heartbreaking. All right, Cole, thank you. We'll be checking back in with you once again, getting closer to that Sugar Limb Road exit where it will take its way off the interstate. We see it right now on I-75. Once it makes that exit, it will head toward the Loudon County Justice Center. It will then stay there 1 minute. The procession will stay still 1 minute before heading on to the funeral home. This tragedy, just a painful, painful reminder for that community. The District Attorney General telling us that Sergeant Chris Jenkins, he was the first cousin of another Loudon County deputy who died in the line of duty. Many of you may remember this playing out in 2004. Jason Scott, he was responding to a disturbance when a teenager shot him as he arrived on the scene. In 2014, the state honored Deputy Scott by renaming a part of Interstate 75 that we were just driving on. They were just driving on in Loudon County. That same section of road is where Sergeant Jenkins was killed yesterday.
Such a loss for this family. We want to show you again this live procession that has been going on for about a half hour now, as Robin mentioned, starting in Knox County and will end in Loudon County. There is an Officer Down memorial page that we referenced a little bit earlier, and these are officers who have died in the line of duty serving our community and communities across the country. And officer in Milwaukee who is retired shared this thought on the death of Sergeant Jenkins. The true measure of a person is not found in the might of their arm, their wealth, or their power. It is found in the strength of their character. There is no greater testimony to one's character than one's willingness to sacrifice all in the noble quest of providing protection to all whom they serve. The author of that is unknown, but this retired officer is saying thank you for your service.
Between words and stopping on the interstate to pay your respect, and also putting flowers, everyone wants to do something to show their heartfelt grief that they are feeling, and no doubt that entire community is feeling. Vinay Simlot, we join him once again at the Loudon County Justice Center, where the procession is just minutes away from arriving. Vinay.
Robin, you can see just how many people have turned out here at the Loudon County Justice Center. They've all now just moved to be close to the road for the procession when it comes by, and they've closed off part of the road in front of me here, looking like we are expecting them to come this way, line up parallel with his patrol car, and then move on to the funeral home. Again, right here at the Loudon County Justice Center, there is a patrol car here in honor of Sergeant Jenkins. And I spoke with people here. A lot of them did know Sergeant Jenkins, and they said that he was the perfect person. A couple of people here know the sacrifice that these officers make every single day when they put that uniform on. One of the people I spoke with here has two sons who are sheriff's deputies who talked about that sacrifice and how difficult it is, John and Robin.
Well, and we know that just based on his service record, that's what he devoted his life to. He was a military man, and then he spent 20 years with the Loudon County Sheriff's Office. Vinay, we appreciate it. We're going to check back in with Cole Sullivan, who is just off Interstate 75 as well. Not far from Vinay, but this is where they'll make the turn to head where Vinay is standing. Cole?
John, and you can see the folks gathered here behind me waiting for that procession to arrive. I'll step out of the way and you can just see the number of folks here along the interstate, the number of people who are parking along this overpass, I should say, waiting here. More law enforcement agencies from or throughout the region, not the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, because those deputies are the ones in this procession that we've been tracking as it's moved from Knox County over here towards Loudoun County. More people pulling off the road here and stopping to show their respects as they begin to stop traffic on parts of this road to allow the procession to go through smoothly and to really go pay their respects and move from here on I-75 southbound, take this exit, take that left and head down towards the Justice Center where Vinay is. We're going to bring you that live as it happens, and we're awaiting those hundreds of law enforcement officers, those vehicles you've been seeing making their way down this direction. And you mentioned along the overpasses of the interstate as well, the law enforcement officers who are gathered to show their respect along the overpasses of the interstate. We have some here over to my left. You can see as this procession begins to arrive here along I-75, you can see it pulling off in this direction as the hundreds of law enforcement vehicles begin escorting the body of Sergeant Jenkins back home here to Loudoun County. You can see them pulling off the interstate at this exit, and they're going to come this direction and then begin taking this left. We'll pan over this direction once they do, and you can see them just pulling out into the road here. Traffic stopped in this direction as this procession, the hearse, making its way off of I-75 now. You can see more and more folks pulling over here on this overpass as the procession comes by. The vehicles with their blue lights flashing, honoring a member of their blue family today. Many folks here you could see gathered along the side here. These cars stopped in honor of Sergeant Jenkins, waiting for his procession to come by. And they're just making this left turn here off of this exit, and as they do, we'll watch quietly as they move this direction.
Cole, we have been talking about the support that has been pouring in for Sergeant Jenkins. As you're watching this procession go by, are you seeing primarily law enforcement from the East Tennessee region? Are you seeing other law enforcement from beyond the area at this point?
Robin, right now you can see just vehicle after vehicle from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office going by, and every single one of these cars has more than one person in it. Every single one that I've seen come by has 2 or 3 people in it, offering their respects as part of this procession. At the beginning of the procession, you saw motorcycle officers from Maryville Police Department, from the Knoxville Police Department, from the Knox County Sheriff's Office as well at the head of this procession as that sky blue hearse makes its way back here to Loudoun County. We saw in some of the SUVs at the beginning of the procession, the Loudoun County Sheriff and his chief deputy also stone-faced, making this drive, the 30 or 35-mile drive, as you've been talking about, from Knox County, escorting the body of one of their own back here, back home to Loudoun County, vehicle after vehicle with their blue lights on right now.
Cole Sullivan live for us in Loudoun County as we just saw the hearse carrying that fallen officer off I-75 and headed to the Justice Center, where we'll also see a moment of silence. That hearse will pause there. We have a crew there momentarily. But Robin, you see those officers right there. And for many of these officers, no doubt, it's staring in the mirror. This is what they do every day. These are the dangers they face, whether they're hit by a car on the highway, as we lost Sergeant Jenkins, or they confront a shooter, as his cousin was killed doing that as well on duty. So this is something that is no doubt a profound moment for all of them.
They take that oath to protect and serve, and that is just exactly what Sergeant Jenkins was doing yesterday morning when he stopped his cruiser, when he noticed there was a ladder on the interstate on 75. He pulled over, and as he was trying to take care of the situation, a tractor trailer came barreling forward, hit two vehicles, his cruiser, and then Sergeant Jenkins, a 20-year veteran of the Loudon County Sheriff's Department, 48 years old. He over the years just accrued a number of new assignments, clearly because of his just how capable he was. He leaves behind a wife and two children, a daughter who is in high school, and a son who is also a patrol deputy with the Loudon County Sheriff's Department. You know, that son looked up to his father and said, one day I want to be like my dad, and he is.
Cole, you're standing by as we see these cars of officers continue to go by you. What else can you tell us about the scene there on the bridge?
It is a breathtaking scene here, John, because we're here on this overpass watching these vehicles go by. That's the Clinton, Tennessee Police Department you see going by. We've seen tow trucks. We've seen the Loudon County Emergency Management Agency. We've seen the Lenore City Police Department. More and more vehicles going by here. And the astounding part is it's not over. As I turn and look over my shoulder at the number of vehicles still coming off of the interstate, you can see over here the direction of just hundreds and hundreds of vehicles joining this procession for Sergeant Jenkins, in honor of Sergeant Jenkins. We'll pan back over this direction and show you them going by once again. Lenore City police officers going by, other sheriff's deputies going by, more and more people coming to pay their respects to Sergeant Jenkins.
Cole Sullivan there, live for us on a bridge over I-75. Again, this procession is headed to the Justice Center in Loudon County and then on to a funeral home. We do have Vinay Simlot, who is reporting from a memorial that's been set up for this officer that includes his patrol car, Robin.
That's exactly right. This is, I would say, the ultimate show of respect as a law enforcement officer when you stop your duties and you take the time to be a part of this process, this procession, to honor a life, a man who made the commitment to serve his community and did it to his dying breath.
And you see the people standing by. We know the crowd is gathering where Vinay Simlot is standing by again at the Justice Center. Describe the scene there now, Vinay.
John, we are starting to see people lined up on the side of the roads. The cars are starting to pass right now. And if Elizabeth can give us a closer look at the Sheriff's Office, the Loudon County Sheriff's Department cars that are passing through right now. And we are going to, in a few moments, as soon as the hearse comes over, we're told that they're going to stop here and they're going to have a moment of silence while the hearse is parallel with Sergeant Jenkins' patrol car. But we've seen Blount County Sheriff's Department and Loudon County Sheriff's Department cars go by right now, and this is the scene here at the Loudon County Justice Center. And here comes the hearse. They're going to pause now for a moment of silence.
There with a pause in front of his own patrol car, and we see the crowd with their hands on their hearts. What else can you say about what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, moving scene here, John. All you could hear during that moment of silence were the roars of the engines of the fire trucks, but the officers on their motorcycles turned the engines there off. Everybody was silent. People took off their hats, put their hand on the heart. A moving scene here just feet away from the Justice Center and the patrol car that Sergeant Jenkins used every day here. But there are so many people who have turned out here just to see him off and say goodbye to Sergeant Jenkins.
Such heavy, heavy hearts. To witness that is tragic, to say the least. And this is a department that has felt its fair share of tragedy. As you mentioned, Vinay, that his unit was on the other side. We couldn't see it, but we certainly saw the hearse, and it was parked there in front of the unit. It has in the window of his unit a decal in honor of his first cousin, who is Deputy Jason Scott, who died in the line of duty in 2004. So tragedy has certainly been something this department has dealt with. We want to go now to Cole Solemn. He is at the Sugar Limb exit, and as you can see, the vehicles keep going, one after the other, as they are making their way to the Justice Center, where we just saw the hearse stay for 1 minute in front of Sergeant's patrol car. But they just keep coming. Dozens and dozens of people showing their respect.
Cole, what can you tell us about the scene unfolding in front of you? It's been pretty extraordinary to see the number of cars involved in this procession, and we see Knoxville police officers as well a part of it.
Well, it's been probably 5 or 7 minutes of this procession here, and it is just now ending. You'll see the last cars going by right now, and folks here who stood in solemn silence this entire time with their hats removed and their hands over their hearts during this time are now making their way back towards their cars as this procession just wraps up in our direction and continues all the way down to the Justice Center, where Vinay is watching them come by here. Vehicles from the Knox County Sheriff's Office and Knoxville Police Department wrapping up this procession as traffic on I-75 begins to reopen here, as this solemn final salute to Sergeant Chris Jenkins concludes from this place.
All right, Cole, thank you very much. And those cars, as you see right there, are making their way to the Loudon County Justice Center. We want to go back to Vinay Simlot, as Vinay, these cars are heading in your direction to pay their respects.
Robin, we've seen now Blount County Sheriff's Office, we've seen Anderson County Sheriff's Office, Knox County Sheriff's Office, Lenoir City Police Department. All of these cars pass by us, passing by the Justice Center. They've turned southbound on Highway 11 off of Sugar Limb, and they're headed towards the funeral home. They just passed the Loudon County Justice Center and the little memorial that they have set up for Sergeant Jenkins here in Loudon County. And we've seen so many people out here. They're all still with their hand over their heart, their hats off, giving the final salute to Sergeant Jenkins as he passes by. We've got firefighters here, we've got police officers from other departments here, and a whole community showing here. I spoke with one man who was a police officer out in California who knew the sacrifice and had to come here to pay his respects, even though he didn't know Sergeant Jenkins personally. So many people turned out, kids, adults, people who are elderly, all coming out to say goodbye to Sergeant Jenkins.
With our live coverage in Loudon County, it continues. We've been on the air for close to an hour now. Again, this procession started in Knox County, and just to fill you in on the background of this officer, he was a servant not just to our community but to our country. A military veteran and 48 years old who lost his life yesterday on the highway. Robin's going to detail that, but just quickly to run down some of his accomplishments in the last 20 years with the Loudon County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Chris Jenkins in 2002 became a corrections officer. Then he became a patrol officer a year later. In 2007, he became a canine officer and then graduated to corporal and finally sergeant in 2021. Again, this officer leaves behind a wife and 2 children. He has a daughter in high school, and his son is also a deputy with the Loudon County Sheriff's Office.
As you mentioned, this happened yesterday morning on Interstate 75. This was heading south, happened around 8 o'clock in the morning. And what we are told by the district attorney's office is that a white utility truck had an unsecured orange ladder in the back. That ladder apparently fell onto the interstate and it hit several cars laying there in the roadway. Sergeant Jenkins responded to remove that. As he was doing so, he conducted a rolling roadblock with his lights on, slowing down the traffic. And when he got to the ladder, he apparently pulled off the side, got out of the car. At that point, a tractor trailer was coming and it did not stop. It hit 2 other vehicles, Officer Jenkins' cruiser and then Officer Jenkins. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or Tennessee Highway Patrol rather, is investigating the crash, but one person has been charged in this case. That person, Christopher Michael Savannah, 42 years old, from Houston, Texas.
Yes, and officers at this point in that investigation say he was high on marijuana at the time of the crash. This is a look at the map of the procession for this fallen officer. You see it started in Knox County there, and it's ending at the Loudon County Funeral Home. We have a live crew there as well. We'll be checking in with them momentarily. But first, Vinay, you're at the Justice Center where they just paused for that moment of silence. And again, just to reiterate the number of people who are a part of this procession and the surrounding tribute. I'm sorry we don't have Vinay, but we can tell you, as Robin, you were pointing out in our live pictures throughout the last hour of our coverage, officers from Knox County, we just saw one pass by there. Knoxville police are a part of this procession. Of course, the Loudon County Sheriff's Office, they were leading this procession to honor their fallen brother.
And as we've talked about this, in times of tragedy, we all search for ways in which we can honor and remember, and this is just one way that the men and women in blue do that. They join together, and they have joined that procession today to honor the life of Sergeant Chris Jenkins. Also, we don't see it from this vantage point, but in front of the Sheriff's Department is Sergeant Jenkins' unit there. We've seen the pictures of flowers that are covering it, people coming there, just really wanting to do their part to pay their respect. And this shows it. We have law enforcement from around East Tennessee, THP, as you can see right there, all coming to be a part of this. They're heartbroken. Longtime Sheriff Tim Guider, unfortunately, yesterday when was trying to talk about the tragedy that they are living, the nightmare, just overcome with emotion, as you would well imagine. This is one of yours.
His department, about 70 to 80 full and part-time deputies. It's a tight-knit department. Just to put that in perspective, we have more than 300 officers in Knoxville Police Department. So you see the tight-knit area that we're talking about as far as the Loudon County Sheriff's Office. And that community is a small one too, very tight-knit, about 50,000 people in the entire county. And no doubt this is really sent shockwaves through everyone. Robin, you mentioned his ties to another officer who was killed in the line of duty in 2004.
That's right, Officer Jason Scott, 2004, a member of the Loudon County Sheriff's Department. He was responding to a domestic call. As he was approaching, he was shot and killed, but still remembered to this day because a portion of the interstate in which this procession just was making its way into Loudon, a portion of that interstate now renamed in honor of him, Officer Jason Scott. And so it just goes to show the scars remain, but they remember. There's a way to remember, and we know going forth there will be many, many ways to remember Sergeant Jenkins.
Here is one tribute from a member of that community.
Our families are actually related, and just at a loss, We lost an incredible man, an incredible father, an incredible officer, and our hearts are broken.
Broken hearts indeed, and we have seen, as you mentioned, we couldn't see in those live pictures the officer's cruiser that was there, but they parked it outside the Justice Center so that people could leave flowers, cards, memories of this officer who spent 20 years serving that community. Again, this procession has been about 35 miles and roughly an hour in its entirety. We've seen it go from Knox County into Loudon County, and one thing that struck us throughout the last hour, Robin, is the number of people, not just officers, but members of the public, who may not have even known this was happening. They were traveling along I-40, going eastbound, and not even knowing that this westbound procession was coming. They were pulling off to the shoulder and pausing as a show of respect.
Absolutely. That procession is continuing, and last we saw Vinay Simlot, the vehicles were continuing to go past you, heading toward the funeral home. Vinay, bring us up to date as to what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, the procession here is starting to wrap up. We have the Knox County Police Department, the Knox County Sheriff's Office, the Knoxville Police Department were here, Blount County Sheriff's Department, Tennessee Highway Patrol. We saw so many different law enforcement agencies from the community come out to support one of their own who lost his life tragically. And you can see they're starting to pull away and reopen these roads on Highway 11 going southbound, and then also here on Sugarloaf Drive right in front of the Loudon County Justice Center. And we want to move out of the way a little bit as these cars try to reopen and move past us. So I'll send it back to you, John and Robin.
Simlot, we don't want to put you in any danger as they reorient around there, but you see what we were talking about, the tribute to that fallen officer's car. Again, some of the tributes include flowers, cards, mementos honoring this officer.
And there's also a decal on his unit, and it is really to remember his first cousin, as we were talking about just a few moments ago, Deputy Jason Scott, who died in the line of duty in 2004, but a decal to remember that life, and of course this memorial to remember the life of Sergeant Jenkins.
And Vinay, we see you standing by there in our coverage. Can you tell us some of the things that you're seeing on that officer's car that have been placed there in the last hour or so?
Yeah, people have been placing flowers, stuffed animals, balloons. There's a military uniform on the right side, on the side view mirror, a nod to obviously his military service before he got in to serve here in Loudon County in the Sheriff's Department. And then on the back, as Robin mentioned, there's a decal for Deputy Scott, who passed away a few years ago as well. So there are so many people who have stopped by either to pay their respects or put something down. Not everybody has put down flowers, but they've all stopped by to pay their respects, to look at the car and say goodbye to Sergeant Jenkins, John.
Vinay Simlot live there in Loudon County for us. Robin, for our viewers who are just tuning in online, we've been in our coverage for about an hour now. Again, this is a department of 70 to 80 deputies and part-time deputies, but this deputy lost his life trying to help others. You have the details on that crash yesterday morning.
That's right, happening at about 8 o'clock yesterday morning on I-75, and this was actually heading northbound. It's right before you get to the Tennessee River Bridge. We are hearing from authorities that a white utility truck had an unsecured ladder on the back. At some point, that ladder fell onto the interstate, also hit a few vehicles as it fell. Then Officer Jenkins, getting the call, goes to the scene. He conducts a rolling roadblock to slow down the traffic with his lights on, and at that point gets out of his vehicle. But also at that point, a tractor trailer comes along. It is not stopping. As I just mentioned, there was a rolling roadblock, does not stop, hits two vehicles, hits the officer's cruiser, and then hits Sergeant Jenkins. That person is now charged and in jail. That person, Christopher Savannah, he's 42 years old, of Houston, Texas, facing a slew of charges, including criminal negligent homicide, DUI, possession of a handgun while under the influence. And John, on the scene, they were able to identify that something wasn't right.
They say that he was high on marijuana at the time of this crash, and that is part of what contributed to the death of this officer. And we want to show you the officer now and again give you some background on Sergeant Jenkins as well. He's had a storied career and a long one with Loudon County, 20 years. In 2002, as we mentioned, he was a corrections officer, then became a patrol officer, and finally a canine officer. He achieved the rank of sergeant just recently in 2021. He has 2 children. One is in high school, his daughter. His son is actually a Loudon County deputy along with the sergeant. One of the things that we are hearing is just how close he was to his colleagues. And here is a little perspective on that we heard yesterday.
This is our worst nightmare, absolutely our worst nightmare. And we're living it right now. We're a family. This is a small agency, and this is home to us. So everybody here is a person, not a number. So it's indescribable.
The men and women in blue, they are family, but in this instance, Sergeant Jenkins truly was family with another fallen law enforcement officer from the Loudon County Sheriff's Department. As we mentioned, Deputy Jason Scott, he died in the line of duty in 2004. He was on his way to respond to a domestic disturbance when he was shot by a teen at that point. That teen also shot other people, in the end taking his own life. And just days after his death, his wife, Joni, delivered their first child, Jaden. Jaden would be 18 years old this month. In 2014, the state honored Scott by naming a portion of Interstate 75 in Loudon County after him. It is that portion of the interstate where yesterday Sergeant Jenkins lost his life. The Deputy Jason Michael Scott Memorial Highway, it's at mile marker 68 to 81, once again on I-75, and it stretches from Philadelphia, Tennessee to Lenoir City.
We're going to check back in with Vinay Simlad, who is live outside the Justice Center in Loudon County, where we did see that procession pause. Vinay.
John, the procession just wrapped up, and I'm here with Miss Rosemary, who knew Sergeant Jenkins very well, and you described him to me in one word, and that was what?
Oh, he was just absolutely a phenomenal person. Very kind, caring, compassionate, loved his community, loved his job, and it's evident that he ended his life trying to help other people.
And is that how he lived his life, too?
That's how he lived his life. He was selfless, always putting others first, and this community is just devastated. It's devastated over the loss of such a great officer.
And did you have a favorite memory or a favorite joke or something that about Sergeant Jenkins that you think back to?
Well, I did the Citizens Academy here in Loudon County, and we went out to the place where they trained the drug dogs, and he was out there with his dog. And at that time, the dog would not do anything he asked it to do, and it ended up running and playing, and we got to pet it. So he was a little dismayed at that point, but it was all in good fun, and that's just who he was. He just rolled with the flow and was so happy all the time and joking around with people. So that just was a classic thing that happened. It was very funny.
So obviously this loss felt by the entire community, John and Robin. So many people turned out to pay their respects to Sergeant Jenkins, and you can see that by the memorial behind me, how many people have put down flowers, how many people have put down stuffed animals, or even just stopped by to say goodbye, John and Robin.
It goes without saying our hearts break for everyone in that community and across East Tennessee. No doubt, lots of love going to Loudon County. Vinay, thank you for that live look and that live interview with some great perspective. He ended his life trying to help other people. We want to show you a live picture of the funeral home in Loudon County. Again, this is the final stop for that officer. The procession ends here.
Indeed it does. As you just heard that member of the community say, he loved his community. He loved his job. He was kind, he was compassionate, and ended his life helping others in his community. And now it is the community's turn to say thank you. We appreciate all you have done, and we're sorry. And they are showing their grief, they're showing their respect by being a part of this procession today.
Before we leave today in our live coverage, we want to remind you of the officer we lost. Yesterday, he was killed on I-75 trying to get a ladder out of that freeway when he was hit and killed by a tractor trailer. This is Sergeant Chris Jenkins. He was 48 years old. He rose through the ranks at the Loudon County Sheriff's Office and spent 20 years with that department. He is also a military veteran, served his country. We are appreciative of you joining us for our live coverage this afternoon. We will continue on WBIR in our newscast a little bit later this evening, and also on WBIR.com. You can read a lot more background about this officer and the impact his loss is having on that department. We leave you now with this picture of the procession passing by the Loudon County Funeral Home, honoring the life of Sergeant Chris Jenkins.